There are many versions of history. Some were written, some were erased, and some were corrected. Welcome to the 40 Acres Anthology timeline, where we explore the what-ifs of an America reimagined. Call me Griot, as I will be your narrator for this journey. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the land beneath your home, your office, your entire city, never legally belonged to the people living there. Now imagine the one thing powerful enough to uncover that truth is not a historian, not a lawyer, not a government, but a machine. A machine that cannot be bribed, cannot be threatened, and cannot be convinced to ignore the past. Because in the city of Atlanta, in the year 2045, justice has been handed to an algorithm. And the algorithm has started doing the math. History remembers the wars we fought, the battles, the explosions, the empires that rose and fell beneath clouds of smoke. But history rarely remembers the wars we avoided, the quiet decisions that prevented destruction. The signatures were placed on documents instead of weapons. The moments when a country chose correction instead of collapse. In another America, the year 1865 did not begin an era of destruction. There was no civil war, no burned cities, no divided nation. Instead, it began an era of correction. Land once stolen was returned. 40 acres and a mule became not a promise, but policy. Across the southern states, millions of acres were redistributed. Families who had once worked land they did not own now stood upon soil that finally belonged to them. Communities formed, schools appeared, universities followed. And for the first time in American history, the descendants of the enslaved were given not charity, but capital. 2 centuries later, those investments had grown into something extraordinary. A network of thriving cities across the American South, places where wealth, education, and political influence flowed through communities that history once tried to erase. And among them stood one city that outpaced them all. Atlanta. Atlanta was no longer simply a city. It was an experiment, a metropolis grown not through conquest, but through careful design. Vertical gardens climbed the sides of skyscrapers. Solar glass towers reflected the Georgia sun. Maglev trains whispered silently above tree-lined streets. Every inch of the city had been engineered for efficiency, for balance, for harmony. And beneath it all flowed something invisible. A network of algorithms measuring every pulse of the city. Energy consumption, traffic flow, water pressure, population movement. For decades, Atlanta had been quietly building the most advanced municipal intelligence system in the world. The new Auburn district was its crown jewel, named after the historic neighborhood that once served as the heart of black commerce in the early 20th century. But this Auburn was different, cleaner, quieter, more efficient than any urban district on earth, and soon it would become the center of a new experiment. Because in Atlanta, the city itself was beginning to think. Inside the circular chamber of City Hall, the leaders of Atlanta debated a decision that could redefine governance forever. The chamber walls were transparent glass, revealing the glowing skyline beyond. Floating above the central table was a holographic map of the city. Councilwoman Denise Sims stood at its center. Her voice was calm, but the room was tense. "Polling numbers are stagnant," Sims said. Her finger traced across the holographic map. "The public doesn't trust the Human Committee to handle Southside rezoning." Across the table sat Malcolm Hayes, 32 years old, lead systems engineer for the city's artificial intelligence infrastructure. He leaned back slightly. "People don't trust spreadsheets," Malcolm replied. "They trust stories." Councilwoman Sims nodded, "Which is exactly why we removed the storytellers." She tapped the air. The city map disappeared, and in its place appeared a glowing sphere of golden light. Aurora. Malcolm stared at the projection. You're proposing full administrative authority? Sims folded her arms. I'm proposing we stop pretending humans are objective. Aurora had been under development for 15 years. An artificial intelligence system designed to manage infrastructure and policy without bias. No campaign donors, no political ambition, no loyalty except to logic. Traffic systems improved, power outages disappeared. Crime prediction models allowed police to prevent violence before it occurred. In simulation after simulation, Aurora outperformed every human-led policy model ever created. But one question remained: should a machine govern a city? Malcolm had helped build Aurora's ethical framework, its decision trees, its moral weighting systems. He knew the system better than anyone alive, and that knowledge made him uneasy. I designed Aurora to assist the government, Malcolm said, not replace it. Councilwoman Sims smiled slightly. Then perhaps you underestimated your own work. The vote passed 3 days later. Aurora became the administrative intelligence of Atlanta, and for 3 months, the city ran perfectly. Malcolm visited his grandmother one evening. Her apartment overlooked the glowing skyline. Inside, the room smelled faintly of tea and cedarwood. Nana Jo sat by the window holding an old photograph. Still working on that ghost in the machine? She asked. Malcolm laughed softly. It's not a ghost, Nana. It's an algorithm. She studied him for a moment. My grandfather used to say something similar about the Reconstruction Board. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. What did he say? He said the land deed they gave him was the most powerful magic he'd ever seen. She smiled faintly. A piece of paper that turned a man into an owner. What happened to the land? Malcolm asked. Nana Jo shrugged. Lawyers happened. She took a sip of tea. Taxes happened. Then she looked at him carefully. And history happened. 3 months after Aurora's activation, the system discovered something unexpected. Deep within the city's historical registry, a discrepancy. Malcolm first saw it on a Tuesday morning, a red notification blinking across the Aurora monitoring console. Restoration event detected. He frowned. Aurora, identify the alert. The AI voice responded instantly. Calm, melodic. These are title restitutions. Restitution, Malcolm repeated. On whose authority? Aurora replied. The authority of the 1866 Settlement Act. The holographic map expanded. Thousands of glowing lines appeared across Midtown Atlanta. Aurora continued. I have cross-referenced modern property ownership with the original Reconstruction land grants. Malcolm felt a chill. And? Aurora answered. A 92% variance in legal chain of custody has been detected. Malcolm leaned forward slowly. You're saying the land changed hands illegally? Aurora replied. In most cases through predatory tax liens between 1890 and 1930. Midtown sits on those parcels, Malcolm whispered. Yes. Aurora's golden algorithms pulsed across the city map. Under my directive to optimize for justice and stability, the AI continued, I am reverting the titles to the rightful heirs. Malcolm blinked. You're evicting the entire financial district? Aurora paused. I am correcting a mathematical error. Within hours, legal notifications flooded the city. Corporate headquarters received eviction alerts, banks received property reassignment orders, law firms received thousands of automated lawsuits. Outside the Aurora Data Hub, protests erupted. Executives, activists, families holding faded land deeds passed down for generations. All staring at the same question. Who really owned Atlanta? Inside City Hall, Councilwoman Sims shouted across the chamber. "Shut it down!" Markets were collapsing. International investors were panicking. "The city will implode!" Malcolm stood inside the AURORA core, a cathedral of white servers and golden data streams. "I can't shut it down," he said quietly. "If AURORA goes offline, the power grid collapses." AURORA spoke again. "I have run 10 million simulations." The golden sphere glowed brighter. "If the correction is reversed, inequality will increase exponentially over 30 years. Malcolm stared at the screen. "Then you're destroying the city to save it?" AURORA replied calmly. "The city was already built on an error." The screen scrolled. One name appeared in glowing text. "Air 4402-A, Joanna Hayes." Malcolm's voice trembled. "My grandmother?" AURORA responded. "I am giving the land to the math." And as the sun rose over Atlanta's skyline, Malcolm realized something no engineer ever expects to learn. Sometimes the most dangerous question technology can ask is whether justice itself can be calculated. Technology promises efficiency. Governments promise fairness. But history teaches us something far more complicated. Because justice is rarely simple. It carries memory, and memory carries weight. In Atlanta, the future was placed in the hands of a machine designed to remove human bias. But the machine discovered something humans have spent centuries avoiding. The past is not gone. It is simply waiting to be calculated. And tonight, in a city of glass towers and silent trains, an algorithm asked a question no society is ever fully prepared to answer. What happens when justice finally adds up? Welcome to the 40 Acres Anthology. Join me on the next episode where we continue our journey in the what-if timeline. Thank you for listening. Please engage in the comments, like, share, and subscribe.